Então, bom dia a todos. Bem-vindos a este segundo dia de trabalhos da 16ª Conferência de Valor APAH, em torno do tema Saúde em todas as políticas. Peço ao anfitrião, Dr. Xavier Barreto, que suba ao palco para as boas-vindas e dar início aos trabalhos.
Muito bom dia a todos. Muito obrigado aos poucos que madrugaram para estar connosco nesta manhã, mas certamente não vão dar por mal emprego o vosso tempo. Portanto, nós temos mais uma manhã dedicada a este grande tema da saúde em todas as políticas. Ontem falámos muito da relação entre hospitais e serviços de saúde e a comunidade. Hoje vamos continuar essa conversa, em primeiro lugar com o professor Martín-Moreno, a quem eu agradeço desde já a presença connosco. O professor vem da Universidade de Valência, trabalhou muitos anos na OMS, tem uma enorme experiência no grande tema da saúde pública, da saúde em todas as políticas, e, portanto, vai ser de certeza uma conferência muito interessante. Temos depois um painel sobre a relação entre serviços de saúde e autarquias, um painel que está ligeiramente amputado, porque duas das pessoas que vinham da Inglaterra não tiveram um voo, houve problemas nos voos, não conseguiram cá estar, mas vão estar à distância. Uma das pessoas que está connosco, a Manuela Castanheira, que é a nossa colega, é autarca, é administradora hospitalar e também é médica, portanto tem estes chapéus todos, mas que infelizmente está doente e não pode estar, mas temos o gosto enorme de ter o professor Taveira Gomes connosco, que é provavelmente a pessoa em Portugal que tem mais experiência nesta relação entre o LS e autarquias, em concreto em Matosinhos, e portanto certamente vamos aprender muito com ele também, com a experiência destes 20 anos de relação com autarquias. E fechamos com a Nathalie que vem do Kicks Fund e que nos vai falar sobre aquilo que está a ser feito agora no NHS. O NHS está debaixo de uma grande transformação, nós não somos os únicos a ter problemas, o NHS tem os mesmos problemas que temos, se calhar até mais agudizados. O NHS tem um grande plano, há 10 anos, de grande transformação e, portanto, vamos poder ouvir em primeira linha o que é que estão a fazer, qual é o plano a médio termo, portanto, a médio prazo, e o que é que podemos, se calhar, trazer para Portugal e aprender com eles. E, portanto, temos aqui uma excelente manhã. Muito obrigado a todos mais uma vez e até já. Muito obrigado.
Avançamos então para a primeira sessão com José Martín-Moreno, professor da Universidade de Valência, que com a sua larga experiência em saúde pública e sistemas sanitários na Europa vai-nos falar sobre cuidados integrados e o papel da sociedade civil. Professor. Bem-vindo.
Muito obrigado pela sua calorosa acolhida. I wish I could deliver the presentation in Portuguese, but I respect your language too much, and I prefer to use our current Esperanto, which is bad English. It's not English, it's bad English. It is a pleasure to join you here in Porto, a city that understands community, connection and continuity. These are precisely the elements our health system struggle to deliver. That's why I'm going to tackle this topic, integrated care and the role of civil society. By the way, I was Director General of Health in the government of Spain. I was Director of WHO programs for Europe. This is not my main specialty. It's not that I am representing the civil society. That was a challenge that Xavier Barreto and Gloria were throwing to me, and I took it with enthusiasm. But this is not because I'm defending here the civil society. In fact, you are civil society. That should be clear, because in reality, civil society is the sphere of voluntary collective actions outside the state, outside the market. It's basically organizations and networks such as NGOs, community groups, professional associations. These are civil society, faith-based groups, patient and caregivers organizations, all of these things that are actually informal civil initiatives that mobilize people around shared interests or values that are independent from the government and business. They are voluntary and self-organized. It's what you are doing here. And are public interest oriented. So you want to do good for the society. So take this into account. So, let me see. I'm speaking here about the perfect storm in public health. So, I stand here today in Porto at the time when our services resemble ships which are built for calm waters and which are now navigating a perfect storm, which is population aging. This is the demographic determinant there. People are living longer than ever, which is wonderful, but at the same time, it's a challenge. The success fundamentally redefines the nature and duration of care needs across life course. And you know that this is a fact. You are living that. You are directing hospitals. You are managers and leading all of these organizations. This is a challenge. At the same time, there is another big challenge. There are more, of course. There's big demands, the prices that are going up, and things like that. But this is the rise of chronicity. Nearly 2/3 of people over 65 now live with one or more chronic conditions. So that's why I was saying that this is like a ship, actually, that was built for calm waters, but they're not calm waters anymore. So the good thing is today, storms reveal something essential: the strength of the vessel and the ingenuity of the people still in it. So always we have hope, and this is what you are doing. How can we handle that? Because this is unsustainable. So in reality, the new reality exposed the core failures of our 20th century system design, because it's, as you perfectly know, a hospital-centric, specialist-driven model built for acute interventions. But we don't have our system in the country I know best, but I think that is also here, and all the countries that I know, not for the longitudinal, multidimensional needs and the aging population living with complexity. So we have something which is very important, because we said demographic problem, that the permanent, we said that chronicity, we can say, the high technology and all the expenditures which are there, the demands, but there's a factor here which is fragmentation. And before entering into the technicalities of that, before we dive into structures, pathways, and governance, let me begin with a person. I mean, sometimes in this kind of meetings, we forget, but you don't forget, I'm sure not, that we are speaking about human beings. So your father, your mother, people that you love. So a person who we have met, the older adult, juggling with, for example, 5 specialists, 3 portals, 2 social services, and 1 exhausted caregiver. If integrated care cannot make the journey human, coherent, and dignified, then we are only rearranging the furniture of a sinking ship. And this is what happened. This is a sinking ship. That's why I'm speaking about that. So this is the challenge, our opportunity to bring the spirit of Porto into the heart of the health policy of working together. So here we have the idea of showing how, primary care, initial point of contact, often overwhelmed. I don't know. I mean, we are always in our primary health care systems always complaining because they don't have the resources, they have a lot of demand and so on, and the resources. So multiple specialists, all of them working in silos, and you are, because I have been also director of a hospital, and all of them say, I don't care about the others. Give me this high-tech tool that I need. So managing single condition, rarely communicating with each other, recurring emergency visits, because the default pathway when coordination fails, the crisis emerge, and the social service operating in parallel system with different eligibility criteria and protocols, and they are not really linked with the health services. And this is not a continuum of care, this is a maze, this is a labyrinth. And you know that this is the case. This is not inventing something strange. The patient becomes de facto coordinator of their own fragmented care, navigating incompatible system, redundant tests, and conflicted treatment and recommendations. They are echoing what I'm saying, but I love it. I interpret this like you concur, so thank you. Obrigado. The consequence of fragmentation is that actually, and this is a work by the OECD, that you know, Integrated Care to Prevent Manage Chronic Diseases, is saying that it's dangerous, it's costly, and it's a poor experience. And I'm going, instead of reading the slide, I'm going to give you the slides for you, so I'm not going to dwell on this. The evidence is clear. Fragmentation is not a minor operational issue. It is structural violence embedded in how we organize care. And this is a fact. And the functional and structural response, we speak and you speak, and in theory, and I see my colleagues from the table yesterday, Leandro, Caterina, Ida. So we were speaking about integrated care. Integrated care is the necessary response to systemic fragmentation in systemic integration. So it's a fundamental reorganization of health and social care systems to manage the new epidemiological and demographic reality. So this is a must. This is not an option, this is a must. Why? What is the goal of integration? So we need to structure, realign governance, financing, clinical process, information system, and you know all the health system framework functions. We need proper governance, we need proper financing, proper generation of resources, and service delivery. At the same time, the goal of integration is to eliminate organizational, professional, and financial silos that fragment the patient experience. Instead of having a fragmented archipelago of services, we should have coordinated person-centered system of care. So unified governance, aligned financing, this is the music that we want to introduce in this symphony, right? Clinical integration. But so far is what we read in the papers, in the books, and so on. And once again, this sounds well, but that doesn't work, and you know. And that's why the challenge that was thrown to me by Javier Barreto and by you is very important. It's not enough, the integration. My central argument today is that challenge that sufficient structural integration paradigm is structural integration alone is insufficient to achieve the transformative goals of integrated care. Because integrated care will only achieve goals of effectiveness, of efficiency, of equity, if partners strategically, all of this work in alliance with civil society. I'm going to try to speak why I believe that this is so. To realize this vision, we must redefine the role of civil society organizations, CSO. I'm going to use this acronym, CSO, Civil Society Organizations in Health System. So instead of being peripheral service providers operating at the margin, we want to have strategic partners in the co-design of intervention and the generation of practice-based evidence. So why? Because it possesses unique capabilities, deep community trust, cultural competence, access to marginalized populations, commitment to equity, and you are a civil society group yourself. Why the ministry should consult with you? Because, I mean, the minister, the Secretary of State, or whoever is in charge of the hospital administration in Portugal, because you have all of this talent, capability, possibilities of being part of the protagonism in order to foster real change for good in Portugal. And this new role is not as contractors delivering predefined services, but co-creators of knowledge, generating evidence about what works, for whom, and at what conditions. So I'm going to speak quickly about the level 1 macro and then the micro. First, the structure. On the macro level, integrated care is about top-down reorganization of government, management, and accountability structure. This is architectural level. This is the redesign of organizational forms to eliminate institutional fragmentation. We could say we are going to force that they are going to be coordinated, things like that. So the goal is efficiency, rationalization of resources, unified governance, and elimination of duplicated administrative structures. We know that. Once again, I'm sure that you come here to the podium and you know all this music. How? Aligning management of structures, financial incentives, which is very important. Without money, everything is a joke. We know that. Sometimes clinical processes under single leadership and accountability. I'm going to bring you certain examples of the examples that I know directly, obviously. So I am a little bit biased toward the examples from Spain. In Basque Country, for example, it is the so-called OSI, Organizaciones Sanitarias Integradas, so that merge primary care and hospital services under a unified management teams. This is working well. And in Galicia, which is very, very Portuguese culturally similarities, we have the so-called IOCSIS, which is Estructuras Organizativas de Gestión Integrada. So unify governance across care levels with shared budgets. This is very important, because if you have the shared budget, you are forced to collaborate. And joint clinical leadership. And this model represents a structural integration and the consolidation of organizational authority to enable coordinated decision-making and resource allocation across previously siloed institutions. So that's a good step in the right direction. Then the micro, the philosophy. At the micro level, integrated care is not a structure, it's a philosophy, it's a way of doing things. It's a person-centered care. This is ethical and operational foundation of integration. The structure, which is the macro, you know that it's not the goal. It's nice, and especially authorities, and I have been an authority, so I have used this kind of speech. But if this means to achieve person-centered care, it's a model that places the person at the center of all decisions, and we also know the philosophy, or at least the concept, but we don't implement it properly. So first, the individual. It's not a patient or case, it's a whole person with biography, preferences, relationships, and aspirations. We have values, care plans designed around what matters to them, not about what matters to the system. Just some time. Partnership, so shared decision-making and collaborative goal setting between the person and the care team. And finally, context. It's not always the same. We are all different, and yesterday we were speaking about the zip code, which is a determinant of health, even more than genes sometimes. So it's recognizing the social, the cultural, the environmental determinants of health and well-being. There are people who need different things about us. One thing is equality, another thing is equity, to give the same opportunities. So we have the demand, if you want to have this person-centered care, that all system processes, clinical, administrative, evaluative, are designed to honor the personhood, the agency and social embeddedness of individuals receiving care. So the key principles of person-centered care are autonomy, participation, and dignity and social inclusion. Once again, I'm not going to read it. But obviously, you know all this concept. And dignity particularly should be underlined. It's respect, individuality, the life history, the personal identity, the right to remain connected to one's community, the relationships, the social assets. Sometimes we have a problem because we institutionalize people, and they are so vulnerable, so afraid, suffering so much. So this is a social death sometimes that can accompany chronic illness or aging. I'm sure that you love people that you see in the picture. So these principles are not aspirational. It's not just an aspiration. They are operational requirements for any system claiming to practice person-centered care. So you have the structural change that we were mentioning before, but also the attitudinal change, the philosophy. So the critical gap here is system or person. So the central tension, the structural contradiction at the heart of integrated care is that the macro system This is something that you and I are dealing with. Standardization of protocols and pathways. You love that, obviously, because I want to have order. I don't want to have chaos. I want to have efficiency. Oh, big word, efficiency, to use the resources properly. Economies of scale. I want to have predictability and measurable process indicators. We actually have even, controlling all of these indicators, and we are following, evaluating, and assessing, and hierarchical accountability and managerial control. And we believe with all of this in our ivory tower that we control everything. But in reality, the micro-philosophy demands personalization of care plans and interventions, flexibility to adapt to individual circumstances because we are not all the same, responsiveness to unpredictable emerging needs, and distributed autonomy and shared decision-making. So the question is, how does the unified bureaucratic structure, which is fine, I mean, I was using the Basque example and the Galician example, the OSI and the EOXC, ensure it delivers social inclusion, autonomy, and participation, because we concurred before that it was a good idea what they are doing. But how this actually ensure the micro-level promises of person-centered care for patients at home, at their families, at their life? This is not a rhetorical question, it's an unresolved challenge for integrated care. And I actually encourage you to carry out research around this, because the theory is clear, but the practice is not that clear. And actually there are not much evidence. Because of the challenge that you throw to me, I have been reviewing that there are not much evidence, not in Europe, not in the world. So still, we need to have this, how the civil society must move from the periphery, because right now it's something nice, we are doing nice things and so on, and sometimes we are providers in civil society, a scientific group, an NGO, but at the same time could be at the center, at the bridge between system logic and lived experience. And this is the thing that I wanted to bring to the table. So this is the indispensable bridge, that's why I was saying, why healthcare professionals cannot bridge this gap alone. We are healthcare professionals, we have already too much to do to focus on the efficiency, on the indicators, and all the delivery. And the civil society organization are the natural bridge, because they are operating at the community, not just in the clinic, understanding the real life, theoretically, like you understand the managers and directors, right? Better sometimes than the politicians, or not? Do you feel that you understand better? So, and defending autonomy. The core purpose is often in defense of autonomy and participation. So there are the accountability mechanisms to ensure the philosophy of person-centered care is delivered by the structure of the integrated care. Traditionally, this was not the role of civil society. I was reviewing this for this presentation, and traditionally, we have been seeing civil society doing sometimes even we are subcontracted by the ministry or by the whoever authority to have service provisions, filling the gaps, sometimes even filling the gaps. Psycho-oncology, for example. We don't have services of, I don't know if in Portugal, but this sometimes is through groups on civil society, covering the last mile of care that the formal system misses. I mean, you have here the different references of example. Advocacy, defending patient rights, of course. The Patient Association, European Cancer Patient Coalition, the diabetes patient groups, and so on. What are they doing? Advocacy, applying outside pressure on policy. We are putting pressure. Okay? And the other thing is information and support. Obviously, one thing that we do is a one-stop shop, saying the self-care, let's say, organization, so informing families, bridging cultural knowledge gaps, because sometimes what we receive from hospital is too technical and we don't understand it. So they are doing this translational kind of role. I don't know if my time, yes. The limitation of traditional role is valuable but reactive and supplementary, and is acting after failure, filling the gap, and acting from the outside. And once again, this is what you are doing, and we are doing in our society. We have SEDISA, that, by the way, I say it explicitly here from the podium, that wants to have strengthened our relationship with the Portuguese APAH and actually doing things together, because together we can be stronger. So we actually are influencers, which is a very nice word, right? Influencers. So it's fundamentally insufficient of the needs of 21st century. We don't need influencers of subcontractors. We need integrated partners. This is the role. So the shift is from this that, service provision, anecdotal cases, filling gaps, last mile delivery, to have the function of evidence generation and co-design, integrated strategic partner, real-world participatory data, shape policy design, and contextual evidence and equity. And once again, in BMC Health Services, there are many references because I was looking for that. There is already some kind of models that could inspire part of this movement. So how could you be evidence generators? Evidence generator. The most critical, under-recognized, and underutilized role of the civil society organization is that we are the civil society, outside the government, outside of business, and so on. We have evidence. So the view traditional is this is only academic or government agencies, but this is dangerously incomplete, because the complex social intervention is not just delivering or giving a drug, it's something else. So this efficacy-effectiveness gap, that the difference between efficacy and effectiveness. Efficacy is basically, does it work in an ideal conditions? Fine. But this is exactly what is happening in many of our centers, and this is happening in our hospitals. So I'm really empathetic with you, because things that your neighbors and your colleagues seeing that they were working for them, suddenly it's not working for your hospital. Because they face the efficacy-effectiveness gap. What worked in the trial fails in the real world, because we need to take into account the local context. Does it work here in my community? The target population, for whom does it work? And the barriers to success. Why does it not work for others? And why does it work here? And we need to understand this better. And as I was saying, even there are different evidence and references studying that. So why the evidence from the civil society organization could be different? Because it could provide real-world evidence needed to close the gap. The unique vantage point, because they are embedded and at the same time capturing invisible realities. So loneliness, for example. You don't have many variables capturing the sense of loneliness. And that this is a pandemic nowadays in the world. Loneliness, solitude, all of this. Transport barriers, caregiving burden, cultural trust. So the image is generated by methods like community-based participatory research. So we have even methods on that. This is a 2020 paper by Brush, and using this community-based participatory research, the community monitoring. So this invisible evidence reveals is that the civil society organization generated evidence for health information for all. This movement now for WHO, health information for all, not health for all, but at least to have the information, show that, that we have document inequities in access to care, identify system gaps, context-specific system gaps, once again, efficacy, not effectiveness. Amplify voices, because amplifies marginalized voices in decision-making. Sometimes if you don't go there and you don't proactively look for that, you are not going to listen to them. And then bridges research and reality, the gap between academic research and community reality. And once again, we have different hats, and I feel myself academic, and I criticize myself because sometimes we live in this ivory tower. So integrated care needs this evidence to be equitable and responsive. So this is the challenge, move from being mere influencers to partners. So here is How do we move from seeing civil society and from external actors to be equal partners, creating the evidence? And instead of saying something has to be done, is we need to do something. It's not the same, the formulation. I'm fed up with this. Everybody knows how others should do the things. The minister, the prime minister, or the coach of your football team, or the national team. Something has to be done by then. No, no, no. Another thing is, let's do something as we should do something. This is the idea. So this is the co-governance issue. So the co-design of the programs, the chronicity program, for example, in Catalonia, this is an example. We have the reference. Researchers and managers identify the efficacy, effectiveness gap in the model. Why it's not working what was theoretically should work in an ideal condition. Co-design processes and priorities identified by patients. Caregiver support, information sharing became core clinical actions of the program. At the same time, the highest level of intervention, this is a European project called If Not Care project that I have discovered thanks to you, because I could say here, I have been working for years in this. No, I was not working for years. I was looking for evidence, and I discovered that this is, for example, in Romania. This is not the country that you would select as the highest academic country for this, but this is giving a lot of evidence here for rare diseases. It's a project to create a one-stop shop model. So for rare disease care. So the civil society role is not just consulted by a civil society, it's co-led by a center, which is called the Noro Center, the Romanian. And this is the higher level of integration. This is a partner. So you have the patient organization with the resource centers, with centers of expertise, the case manager, and all of them working for the person, for the human being, for the patient. And actually, this is the enough care model in practice. I discovered that it was, the real equal partners fully realized, co-designing, co-implementing, and co-governing. And actually, this is the reference, European Social Fund Plus, European Commission 2024. This is a co-leader. The Noro Center did not just advise, they were training, they were giving technology development, and they suggesting policy reform. Barriers to full integration could be different. Obviously, this is not easy, because Paula could ask me, is this easy? No, it's not easy. If it were easy, it wouldn't have any merit. So it wouldn't be really a challenge. So we have systemic, because barriers, fragmented governance and funding silos, reimbursement models that penalize all of these things. We have organizational barriers, cultural resistance, even to change from professionals. How can we give this role to civil society? I mean, we are the professional, we know what has to be done. And relational, out of sync collaboration, opaque consultations, processes that bias industry over civil society organizations, and lack of systematic evaluation of participation. So it's not going to be easy, but it is possible through a dual transformation. And I call it, and to finish, a civil society organization push and a system pull. The push is professionalize the ability to generate and communicate actionable evidence. This is also for APAH. We are not here only to speak about us. We are going to push it, what we know. And at the same time, the system, because you are also part of the system, you have to listen better. System must create a formal structure to listen and integrate evidence. By the way, it's not enough for civil society organizations to knock on the door. You need to build the door, because this is closed. This is actually a wall there. So the push is understand the policy context, to forge alliances, to package the evidence, for example, policy briefs, direct workshops, formal public consultations, participation in expert groups. So actually there is a reference from this year, very recent, the European Commission is sharing scientific evidence and policy making, a starter kit. And I advise you to take this into account even for yourself and also to understand how civil society organizations in your areas could also work. And then the system pool, I'm sorry because I was going to put there a big ear, but I didn't insert it there at the end. The architecture of listening, the primary responsibility lies with us, the system leaders. We must build the architecture of listening. So, and this is an example from WHO, civil society task. This is something that has been also very recently developed. So create formal dialogue spaces and at the same time share data platforms. So a radical recommendation, the tripartite leadership. So 3 legs. So we have it could be the ministry or whatever the authority, even it could be another international organization, and then the civil society organization as co-lead. So this model uses the emergencies, but it was actually tested in certain emergency cases, and it has been used in chronicity for health clusters and so on. So the closing the circle is that we have the crisis of chronicity and equity is the central challenge for the 21st century of the health system. The structural response is integrated care. We know that integrated care will fail if it only integrates clinical silos. True integration must connect the system to the community, that the system, civil society is the irreplaceable bridge for this connection. This is my thesis. Require a new transformative role, and your role as actually system leaders to build these tables where we can talk together and partnership can happen. So I'm going to finish saying this famous sentence, health isn't everything, but without health, everything else is nothing. So we need to actually claim that some attention should be invested in this. And finally, we began with storm and we end with a bridge. So at the end, integrated care will not succeed if we don't work together. This is the idea. And let's commit to designing policies that are technically sound, financially prudent, and above all, humans. Muito obrigado.
So, Professor, I know you have a plane to catch. I'm going to be very quick. Thank you. It's very interesting, your presentation. Between the push and the pull, we have a lot of push because we have to face many silos, as you said. And the silos are big and very strong. So they are constantly hitting the wall. And it's very interesting because we always talk about putting the patient in the center, but that's a theory. That's a theory because of the system. Because of the system that pulls. So between the silos and the many pressures of the corporate groups that we have within the system, how can health administrators accelerate strategic partnerships and pressure public and integrated policies? Because, as you say, it's a sinking ship.
Sure. First of all, one thing is to simplify, another thing is to be simplistic. Mm-hmm. And which is very common. We tend to be simplistic because this facilitates our life. We want to have to work in silos. Ophthalmologists want to see only the eyes. You see this, even in the hospital, working with the specialists and so on. At the same time, we want to work within ourselves and not too open because they have a different language, a different culture, and so on. So we have been saying that we should establish formally policy dialogues, for example, trying to bring them into the table, trying to listen. And sometimes you will really be surprised because they have wonderful ideas of things that have not been working, and through the lens of organizations which are working there, which are identifying vulnerable population, which are actually in the middle of all of that, and they will help you to move forward and tackle, actually progress in these obstacles that we find in order to deliver and to have the proper success. So I am absolutely sure. And finally, at the end, sometimes we know that this is a concept which is very difficult to achieve, which is wholeness. Wholeness is, we are not only certain parts of the body or certain organizations and so on, we are all interacting with each other. So the more that you are able to cope with this, not to solve it completely because this is an immense challenge, but the more that we have this integrated perspective, the wholeness of life, I'm sure that you're going to, first of all, experience the reality of life and contribute better to a better world.
Oh, let's hope we get there sooner than later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you so much.
Very nice for having you. Have a nice trip, Professor. Thank you so much.